Luke, let's talk a little bit about Sony phones.
Yeah.
Sony phones, or Sony Mobile,
Mm-hmm.
are an interesting thing because you don't find them at carriers,
Yeah.
at least here in the United States.
Yeah.
They sell their phones direct to consumer, and they were one of the first companies to kind of truly embrace that.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a while.
And they were one of the first companies to kind of make sure that all of their phones had IP67, 68 protection.
Yep.
They had very distinct look.
Yep.
That continues to this day. You will occasionally run into somebody with a Sony phone, but not too many.
Sure.
But there are multiple Sony phones available for people to choose from.
Yeah.
And we're here to kind of help people parse through what is available and what you might be looking at if you're a prospective buyer.
Yeah. Their naming conventions are kind of similar. So it's kind of hard to tell maybe what's the difference between them.
And they do the whole thing with, instead of years, like the 2022 version, they do mark.
Yeah.
Like they do with a lot of their cameras.
Sure.
And we'll find here with all of Sony phones, and this is kind of like a qualifier, a lot of what Sony does really leans into the camera experience.
Yeah.
And the audio experience.
Yeah.
I mean, they do that for, not only their TVs, but they also do that for even computers way back when the Vio computer came out.
Yeah.
It was really heavy on the audio video experience. It was all about the best of what you see and what you hear. So let's just kind of break things down. There's really only 3 lines right now. The top of the line, we'll come back to at the end here, is a Xperia Pro I, which is kind of like an imaging kind of really, let's just throw everything at it that we can.
Sure.
Let's give it a, every camera has, super high capabilities, lots of software, lots of AI, things like that. So we'll come back to that. Let's start at the entry level.
Okay.
Which is kind of weird because the numbers don't make sense.
Yeah. So Sony, as a brand in general, are not the cheapest. They're not seen as bottom of the barrel. They're a quality brand. They do a lot of the stuff that they're in. They are one of the nicest brands in that category. And phones, it's interesting because they're not a phone first manufacturer.
Right.
And so they have that quality in the hardware and like we said, some of the imaging capabilities and some of that stuff. But when you look at the price versus the phone you're actually getting, it can seem a little lackluster sometimes.
Yeah. If you're just looking at bullet points and comparing how much RAM, what processor, what are the megapixels, that's not really doing Sony any favors.
Sure.
But if you spent time with any Sony phones and use some of the shooting modes and some of the different cameras that they have in there, Sony cameras are included in other manufacturer phones.
Right.
And they make a big deal about that when it has a Sony sensor.
Right.
So this is Sony giving you, direct from,
it's almost, it can almost be said maybe that you're buying a camera that includes a mobile phone.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the Xperia 1 and the Xperia 5. The 5 is actually the lower of those. And that's also can maybe be confusing to people if you're thinking, well, do I want a 1 or a 5? The 5 sounds like a higher end. The 5 is your entry level mid-range.
Sure.
In this, in the scheme of what Sony offers. So for your money, and you're looking at about $800 for the Mark III.
Okay.
This is the 3rd generation of the Xperia 5. You're going to get a 6.1 inch display, but you're going to get the high refresh rate, the high touch sampling. It's going to run Android 11, and it's going to give you a Snapdragon 888 processor. So that's getting a little older.
Yep.
Because now we have the 8 Gen 1. Then there's 8 gigabytes of RAM with that, 128 gigabytes of storage, plenty for a lot of people. And if you look at other phones from, maybe a Google Pixel or something, you compare these, it's going to compare very favorably.
Sure.
4,500 milliamp battery. Now this has fast charging, but it is not a wireless charging.
Okay.
It doesn't have the power sharing either.
Okay.
But you've got a set of 3 cameras. Each of those are 12 megapixels. There's 16 millimeter, 24 millimeter, and then the other one has a 70 millimeter and 105 millimeter. Those are your different shooting, and you can speak to that a little bit about the differences and what that might provide for people.
Yeah, you're going to get quite a range of photo styles that you can take, whether it's wide angle or the macro or things like that. And you're going to get the Sony image processing. So you're going to have really nice color. You're going to have good, sharp clarity. A lot of their cameras on their phones have the Zeiss glass. So it's a super high quality, super high clarity glass. So yeah, it's for this phone, for what it is spec wise, is, you know, in that mid range, in that price point that's maybe on the top end of what a mid range would be.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're buying just based off of money, you can get more phone for your money.
Sure.
As a general user.
Right.
But if you are a vlogger or somebody who's shooting semi-professional stuff, or really trying to just kind of expand your capabilities, this is a great way to do that. Moving over to the Xperia 1, which is more of the flagship.
Yeah.
There's the Mark IV, which is the newest version of that. Again, now that has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, so the processor is newer. Runs Android 12. It's going to have 12 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabytes of storage, so you're bumping up along the board on all of those. Bigger screen, 6.5 inch.
Okay.
That's 3840 by 1644 resolution, so you're looking at 4K quality screen. 5,000 milliamp battery with wireless charging and power sharing capabilities. So you're getting a lot more of everything. And then the cameras. There are all of the cameras on here are 4K video HDR shooting capable.
That's pretty awesome, especially for that includes the selfie camera, right?
I believe so.
That's pretty incredible.
And
I think it's 3 on the back and 1 on the front.
120 frames per second. These are, again, really leans into when they come out with a new feature hardware-wise, software-wise, AI, shooting modes. They throw it at it. This is the newest and the best of what Sony has for that.
Sure.
Comes with a heavy price tag.
Yes.
It's twice that of the Xperia 5. So you're looking at about $1,600 for that one. Now, you can still get your hands on a Mark III version of this. So this is basically the previous generation of that. And that kind of dials back down a little bit on the memory, on the storage, previous version of Android processor. But you still get the big screen, the touch sampling, refresh rate, the great cameras, the AI, and all the smarts. So the Xperia 1 is your flagship series. And then the newer the Mark, the higher the price.
Yeah.
Now, the Xperia Pro I, which is your imaging one, this again, when you look at just the specifications, it doesn't sound like that much of a phone.
Right.
Comparatively speaking. It's an Android 11 device, 6.5 inch screen, high resolution, high refresh rate, touch sampling. Games look amazing on this. Sony does a great job with their codec support, the LDAC capabilities. 4,500 milliamp battery. This one is USB power delivery, so it's not wireless charging. Won't share your battery with anything else. Again, has 3 12 megapixel cameras, but it has, the big deal on this thing is it has a 1-inch image sensor.
Yeah.
Which does what for photos?
It's a very high dynamic range photo. So it'll get you a huge image, and it'll get you all of the detail that you can get in that image.
Yeah.
It's interesting too because the this Pro series, the Pro I, also if you have the Sony camera, if you're in that kind of ecosystem, this one will also work as a on-camera monitor. So if you're recording video, there's a mini HDMI connection that you can go out from your camera, out from your Sony Alpha camera into the phone and use your phone as a 4K monitor, which is pretty awesome. Like I mean, a 4K monitor, an external monitor for a camera is expensive.
Yeah, I mean, hundreds of dollars just for a standalone.
Right.
no name brand.
Right. And to be able to use that, especially if you're a one person show and you want to be able to get a little bit better of a video recording experience for yourself, that helps a lot. Now, there's maybe a little bit of argument to be said is, do I want my cell phone tied up for the day while I'm shooting? If I get a phone call, I have to take my camera ring apart to answer it. Obviously, there's Bluetooth and stuff like that, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
But yeah, this thing is definitely focused on image capture, video capture. And
again, that also with the sensor you're looking at, when you hear people talk about great cameras on phones, it's great in low light conditions. It's optical image stabilization, video stabilization. It's a lot of stuff that under the camera you're not going to see when it just says 12 megapixels.
Right.
So you have to kind of really dig into that. So if you're somebody who really cares about the video, the camera, the still images, Sony is probably one that's going to be on your radar, or maybe should be on your radar.
Sure.
If you're somebody who says, hey, I'm looking for a nice phone that's unlocked, Sony's probably not going to be. And I think that's probably why we don't have Sony, the relationships here in the US, or the availability that we see with other phone makers. So if you seek it out, or if you kind of already find your way to that, that's really kind of Sony in a nutshell as of spring 2022.
Yeah.
So that's it. The Xperia 5, then there's the 1, and then you've got the Pro I.
Yep.
Hope that clears things up for you.
Thanks for watching.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast.
Thanks for listening.
We appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, feedback, concerns, comments, anything, shoot us an email at podcast@AndroidGuys.com. We'd love to hear from you one way or the other. Luke, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
I am on Instagram and Twitter at Luke Gaul, Gaul.
And I'm on Instagram at Scott Webster and Twitter as SWebster77. Until next time, thanks for listening.
See ya.